Okay, let's start with where we ended up on part 1. So I'll copy this code over into the main.forthic file. And yeah, so let's give it a try. All right. And there is one thing I want to show you before we get started here, and that is if you open up your developer tools here and we load this time and state app, you'll see that depending on your JQL, you may have a lot of tickets. And because of the way we compute the time and state, where we have to grab the change logs for each of these tickets, each of those is a separate call. So it may take how long was that? 18 seconds. So, it's not horrible, but after a while, that gets to be too much. So what I like to do is to use the cache module. And so let's take a look at that real quick. So if we just add the cache module here, so instead of augmented tickets, I like to rename this to be augmented tickets bang. And what that indicates is that we are changing something. In particular, when you see a noun in bang, often that means that we're caching it. So if I wrote that into augmented tickets is the key, and cache bang is what we're going to use. And so if you hover over this, you'll see that it takes an object and a key and stores that object in the cache. And if we run that, it'll still take the same amount of time the first time, but you'll see that we get something out of that. Oops. All right, so actually, yeah, so it's complaining. The error that we saw was an unknown word, and it says I couldn't find augmented tickets, and that's because we renamed this to augmented tickets bang, and we didn't define a new augmented ticket. So let's just do that. And the way that will work is it will pull the tickets back out of the cache. And so similar to how bang and at work, we have cache bang and cache at. So bang sets it and at gets it. And all right, so now let's give it a try. Okay, you see it's running. Okay, so it finished. And we hop over to the sidebar and we see we have a cache file, and it's an object. It has a key, augmented tickets, which has an array of tickets in it. And once we have this, then this report runs a lot faster. So if I comment out that call, then it's going to run the same way as before, except now it's going to pull the tickets out of the cache. And if I run that, you see that it finished in 22 milliseconds. So that's that's how fast you want it to go. The cache file is nice because it gives you a way to see, what's going on. There's another way to see what's going on, and that's to use the .s word. And so if I did something like augmented tickets and I do a .s, what that's going to do is it's going to stop the interpreter, and it's going to drop you into the debugger. In this case, when we say augmented tickets.s, what it's going to do is call that word, which will return a list of the augmented tickets, and then it will print that to the stack. And so if we reload this again and take a look back at the terminal, you see now we have the same information that we had before, but it's in this kind of Python-y format. And so yeah, you should use both. This is a quicker way to just take a look at what's going on, but the cache file is also another way because it nicely formats the information. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to write data out to a gsheet. And I have a gsheet that I've set up here, and this is where I want to put it. And so we have a gsheet module that we can use. So if we just use that here, and then we're gonna, it's similar to the Jira prod context, the Jira context, we're gonna need a Google one. And so we have context.google, and we're gonna do gsheet push context, same thing. And if you haven't set up your Google OAuth tokens, see the video, Google setup video for that. And once you have that set up, then you can continue to follow along here. All right. So now that we're using the gsheet module, we can get the auto completion for the gsheet words. And so let's see, we don't need this anymore. So if I do gsheet, you can see all of the different things we have here. And the word that we're going to use is this gsheet records. And so if I hover over that, you see that it takes a tab, a header, and records. And this tab is the tab that, a tab in the gsheet. And I'll show you how to set that up in a second. Header is going to be the column names for what you want to write out. And records is going to be an array of records that has those column names as fields. And so it's just going to write that out to the sheet. So to start, let's define a gsheet URL, and we'll just grab that from here. All right, and then we can define a tab, and that's going to take a gsheet URL. So if we hover over that, you see it takes a URL and returns a tab. So that's in good shape. And so what we can do now is just a quick little test to just make sure that everything is working. And so we have our augmented tickets. And so let's see. So this takes a tab, a header, and record. So let's just do a tab. And to check what you have in terms of headers, we have here ID, key, resolution, status, assignee, and these duration objects. So let's not worry about the duration right now. Let's just write the key. Actually, let's just write the key just to start. It's always nice to start with something small before you get too far ahead. So here we're going to need, we need a key. And then we're going to need the records, and the records are going to be the augmented tickets. Okay, so now if we run this, what I'm thinking is going to happen is that it's going to get the tab, get these tickets, and write them out to the sheet. And in particular, it's going to write out the keys. So let's give that a try. So, okay, so let's give that a try. And you see that now we get all the keys out. Okay, so cool. And this is kind of what I was referring to in the last video, where you just want to get something running and then just keep it running and take little steps. And each little step, everything is still working. And so now that we have that working, we can start extending this a little bit. And one thing that we want to do is not just write the key, but we really want this duration information. And so we have these duration, and we're going to have, this is a record, which we added in last time. And we have to do, in progress, and done. So and if you notice here, it's this is a record with a nested record. And so writing this out directly is not going to work. But one thing that we can do is flatten this record. And I'll show you an example of that, and then we can keep going. One thing that's nice to do is just, before you do something to everything, it's nice to do something to one thing. And let's see, the first, let me see, one, yeah, so it's probably like the 11th one down, maybe. I could, what I'm looking for is like stuff that actually has information in it, because this is what I want to show you. So let's just look at the 11th one down and see what's in there. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run this with the .s, and so we can see what happens in the terminal. And the .s is going to stop execution, and we see what we get. Okay, so we do have a duration here with some information. Cool. So then I'll just let that play through. And then since we do have a ticket here, one of the things we can do is, as I mentioned, flatten it. So if I look at the flatten word, so it takes a nested record and then gives you a record. So let's see what that looks like. And this type of like kind of exploration with forthic by trying the word and seeing what happens, this is a great way to learn. A great way to learn lots of different things. But yeah, so cool. So now what we have here is just a flat record, and you can see here, instead of having this nested object where we had a duration, and then it itself was a record where the keys were to do and done. Now it flattened it into duration.todo and duration.done. And again, we could see that if I use another forthic word called keys, we can see what the keys are. So then I'll restart that again and look here. And yeah, so these are the keys. Okay, cool. So now we could write this out if we like. So we could now, I'll come back to here. And so we can start writing these things out. So we have the key, maybe we want the assignee, and then the status, and then maybe duration dot to do, and then duration dot done. And I know there's a duration dot in progress, and we can add that too. Dot, and I think it's, yeah, so it's spelled caps in progress. Okay, so same thing as before. We have the tab, the headers, and we can't just send the tickets. We have to flatten the tickets, and we want to flatten every ticket. And so instead of calling flatten on this, what we can do is map the flatten word across each of those tickets. And if we hover over this, we see that it takes an array and forthic, and it's going to return a new array whose values are the result of applying that forthic to each one. So let's give this another try and see what we come up with. So we'll continue to get back. We'll restart this. We'll take a look at this. And now you see, okay, now we have actually some information being written. So that's okay, but one thing is you may not like to use these these labels. So there is another word that we can use here, and it's called RELABEL. And so what it does is, if you give it a record and you give it an array of keys, old keys, and then an array of new keys, it'll relabel the old keys to the new keys. And it'll do that in a one-to-one correspondence in the order that you specified. So, so let's just write out these old keys and new keys. And actually, I have an example that I was using earlier, so I'm just going to paste that in. And so the old keys are assignee, key, resolution, etc. And yeah, the new keys are going to be assignee, and then instead of key, we will have Jira. Instead of duration.todo, we're going to have to do in days, and in progress in days. And so that's kind of how we're going to do it. And We could keep adding stuff onto this flatten thing, but another pattern I like to do is when you're converting something into something else, like this augmented ticket into essentially a row record, I like to just call that a row record word. So the way to read this is this greater than is 2. It's like you're converting whatever is on the stack into a row record, and then we could just do the things that we were going to do. So we're going to flatten it first, and then we're going to use this relabel word, and because old keys and the new keys are going to be the headers, and so that applies to each augmented ticket. And so now I can apply that here. Okay, so let's give that a try and see what happens. Okay, so that didn't quite work out how I was expecting. So it looks like all of this stuff came in. Oh, okay, so I know. We were using, okay. So yeah, so one thing to notice is that we still had the old headers here. So it was only writing out information that it had from the old headers. And because we converted it into a row record, those headers didn't exist anymore. So what we need to do is when you write the gsheet out, you need to actually use the headers. Okay, cool. So let's give that a try. Okay, so now everything got written out again. And this time we have the new headers here. So one thing that we may want to do here is we have these records that don't have any information, and because nothing has been done to them yet. And so one thing we could do is filter out anything that's not resolved yet. And the way to do that here is if you look in the cache, yeah, so resolution of null means that it hasn't been resolved. And so we can add another utility here, which is we just want to filter to select the resolved tickets. And the way we do that is we use a select, and what select does is takes an array and forthic, and this forthic will be applied to every element of the array. And if it resolves to true, then we select it. If it resolves to false, then we don't select it. And so really what we want here is we want to get the resolution value out of the record. And if you remember last time, the way that select works is that it'll apply this to an array. This convention of naming something with a pipe in the front means that we're going to pass an array to it. And so that's how we know what this is going to do. All right, so now what we can do is in this, we can filter out, we can select only the resolved records. And yeah, so now when we run this again, we should just get information about resolved tickets. Okay, cool. So now we have more information here. So one thing is, since we have a smaller number of tickets, we didn't actually clear the information that we had at the end. And yeah, so you can see that we have some duplicates here. So if I have CF1 I have CF1. And so, yeah, so that's bad. And so another word that we can use is to clear the sheet before we do anything. And so we can, if we look at gsheet.clear, all it says is it takes a tab and it clears the contents of that tab. So if we do that first and then do the rest, then it should be good. So let's give that a try. Okay, see, now we cleared it, then we wrote it, and now we don't have any more duplicates. Okay, and the last step that we'll do here is to clean things up a little bit. And so really, this is the thing that we want. This is the thing that we want to use to export to the gsheet. And I can call that update gsheet bang. The bang here it's kind of your personal choice. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. Then we would just put this right into here. And so one step that I kind of skipped is this, since we are using the cache data, I haven't been calling this basically this update of the cache. But if you were to do this properly, you would need to call this word first. It would grab a fresh set of tickets, write that into the cache, and then once that's done, then everything else should proceed. And then if you wanted, and let's see, actually let's show you what I mean. So if I were to run this again, and so that's going to update. And if I change the JQL, so instead of CF, so I have a blog project. So let's use that. Let's see what we have here. And I'll just open up this cache thing here, and we're going to reload. And then we'll hop over to here, and we should see these CF tickets turn into blog tickets. And then we should see blog tickets now here. And then in the gsheet, we see that we have a fresh set of tickets. And so, so the augmented tickets bang is working. This example is working. And yeah, so this is kind of how you would use it. One last thing is a little bit of cleanup. And similar to what we did last time, we could start organizing this information into sections. And we roughly have it like that, but I like to call things out. Okay, so we have gsheet, we don't need this. Okay, and then I like to add like a little note. Okay. And yeah, so that is it. So there's a lot more you could do with the gsheets. You can format stuff, you can add notes, you can there's lots. Basically the entire gsheet API is available for you to manipulate. It's not an easy API to use, and so there might be a little bit of fiddling that you'll need to do. And in some of the videos that we'll go over in the future, I'll show you how to set up some words to make that a little bit easier. But for now, I've shown you examples of pulling Jira data and writing it to the gsheet. The gsheet example, if you went through that, shows you how to read from the gsheet. And so that's basically the rudiments of this integration. And it gives you a sense of how to integrate Jira data with other data sources and other places where you can share data. We'll also go over how to write this to Confluence in a future post. And when we start getting into Forthic React, I'll show you how to build dashboards that present that information graphically. And once we have email, then we can email them out. So there's all kinds of different things that you can do with Forthic and with your Jira data. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.